We're delighted this morning to have a distinguished speaker, Virginia Hepner, who is the president and CEO of the Woodruff Arts Center. I think you all know, and if you don't, you should, that Woodruff Arts Center is the sort of centerpiece, organizational focus of gravity of arts in the whole Atlanta area. It's a very important institution for Atlanta and in fact for Georgia in general. Prior to becoming the president and CEO at the Woodruff Arts Center, Virginia had a successful 25-year career in banking at Wachovia, where she was executive vice president, among other duties, executive vice president, head of U.S. corporate finance, and manager of the foreign exchange and derivatives trading group. She's always been passionate about the arts, and in fact, in recent years has had a number of, I love this, interim assignments. She's going to have to, yeah, we're going to have to, I can relate. We're going to have to talk about this, Virginia, including Brand Atlanta, Inc., the Atlanta Ballet, and Young Audiences, which is one of the 4 divisions of the Woodruff Arts Center. In addition, she is director of the State Bank and Trust Company and the State Bank Financial Corporation. She's received numerous awards: City of Atlanta Phoenix Award, Image Film Festival Community Award, Lexus Leader of the Arts, Atlanta YWCA, Woman of Achievement, Business to Business Leader Award, and Outstanding Partner Award from Home Depot. She's on the board of the Penn Institute for Urban Renewal and the Padilla School and endowment boards, and is a member of Service Advisory Board for Mayor Reed and the Emory Board of Visitors. She graduated from Wharton with a bachelor's degree in finance and an MBA from the Kellogg School at Northwestern. She's also a graduate of Leadership Atlanta, and she and her husband and their 2 children reside in DeKalb County. Will you please join me in giving a warm welcome to Virginia Hepner?
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it very much. Thank you, Chuck. Good morning, everybody. What a pleasure to be here. You know, given my resume, you're probably wondering, what is the connection to the arts when someone has all these business backgrounds? And I'm going to try to explain that to you. But it starts with passion, and that's really why I'm here. That's why I'm in this role. I've learned a long time ago to start with the mission in mind, and so I'm going to start with a video because I have the pleasure of working at an arts center, and we're all about the art. So I'm going to wake you up this morning if you're not awake and show you a really brief video that just is a summary of what my colleagues at the Alliance Theater, the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, and the High Museum produce and do every day. So we're going to start with that. And I don't know who's rolling that for me. Should I? This is the trick. Where's my AV guy? There he comes. This is the most important person in the room, as we've all learned a long time ago. Excuse me while we handle. Click here to view video is the key. Great. Thank you, Adam. And then is it? Okay, great. Thank you. All right. They didn't hire me for my technical ability, I can tell you that. This is Randy Donaldson, my colleague in communications. So.
It's been said that art is what makes us human. But art is also the heartbeat of a city.
The arts give Atlanta its sizzle. The arts give Atlanta its style. The arts give Atlanta its soul.
And at the heart of this city's arts community, Atlanta's most important arts organization, the Woodruff Arts Center.
Combining performing and visual arts on a single campus.
home to one of America's leading orchestras. More Grammys than U2 and the Rolling Stones combined.
My favorite tag.
Engaging audiences with great music and world-class artists.
In 3 outstanding venues.
The Southeast's leading art museum.
500,000 visitors every year.
More than 13,000 works in its permanent collection. And unprecedented partnerships with museums around the world. A nationally acclaimed theater with a local address.
Winner of the Regional Theater Tony Award.
A launching pad for important new productions. More than 60 world premieres. The Woodruff Arts Center.
Bold new initiatives, making the arts available to everyone.
Georgia's leader for arts education. Bringing the arts into our schools and communities.
Reaching hundreds of thousands of children every year, all over Georgia.
Offering our community a magnificent variety of performances. Partnering with Georgia's best.
To make the arts more accessible and more vital than ever.
The financial impact on the city of Atlanta.
More than $500 million a year.
The quality of life impact on the people of Atlanta.
Incalculable.
None of this could have happened without people like you. None of it can continue to happen without people like you. The Woodruff Arts Center. Internationally renowned.
A place where everyone feels welcome.
Come, connect, experience the heartbeat of Atlanta.
That's a pretty fun place to work, isn't it? Thank you. And Chuck, thank you for your comment. It is, I view the Woodruff Arts Center as an anchor institution, just like University of Georgia and so many great institutions we have across the state. And my goal here today is to cover at least 2 areas. One, to make sure you understand the Woodruff Arts Center and tell you a few things you may not know, which I find pretty interesting, and I hope you do. Second, to talk about the intersection with business and the arts and some highlights around that, not just for the Woodruff Arts Center, but on behalf of how important the arts and culture is to a community from a business perspective. And then 3, Q&A. So anything, I've been in the job a year, so I guess I should have all those answers right now. But really, I'm very interested in what you have to say and any issues you have. So I want to ask you a couple questions first to help me. One, if you could raise your hand of how many of you are Atlanta natives. You know, that's a higher percentage than most rooms. And then second, how many of you as a child participated in the arts? That is a very high percentage. And how many of you still participate in the arts? That's great. Wow. So I have a target audience here. This is good. The reason I ask those questions, for a lot of reasons. One is to help people understand a little of the history, if you're not from here, what an amazing history it is that's associated with the Woodruff Arts Center, and it's unique in America, and I'll tell you about that. If I can get this going. One more thing here. This is why I have my wingman come back up here. I'm going to talk a little bit while you do that. So, got it?
Which one is forward?
Yeah. So let me talk about first a little bit of the history of the Woodruff Arts Center. Those of you who are natives probably know this truly tragic story of the history of what became the Woodruff Arts Center. In 1962, a generation of arts patrons. I remember how, with the population was a few 100,000 people in Atlanta in 1962, took a trip, an arts patron trip to Europe, and it was 120 people. And on the way back, the plane crashed at Orly Field in Paris. Everyone died. Terrible, terrible tragedy. And the impact of that was, of course, on their families and friends, but also on the community, because those people were really beginning to work on forming the Arts Alliance that actually became the Woodruff Arts Center. You know, out of tragedy, you hope really great things happen, and I can't imagine they would have ever envisioned what it's become. But Robert Woodruff, who was the CEO of the Coca-Cola Company, who did not know Mr. Woodruff, but apparently was not a big arts patron personally, but really was a civic leader. And he said, we need to do something to recognize these folks and recognize what was important to them. And he really led the funding effort of joining these entities together, and actually it helped create the Alliance Theater, which was at that time wasn't part of the Woodruff. And so it became one single legal entity, which for those of you particularly on the trust side or in legal side, understand what that means. So to have, okay, from a hearing perspective, we are one legal entity. So we have 4 divisions, but we all roll up into one entity financially. That model is unique in America, actually. So you think about Lincoln Center or the Staples Center in Los Angeles or the Arts Center in Miami, Kimmel Center in Philadelphia. These are performing arts centers. We're the only one with a museum attached to it. But all of those have separate 501c3s. I think Philadelphia has, I think, a dozen resident companies. That makes a lot of difference at the end of the day, because Mr. Woodruff said, you know, we really want the divisions to focus on the art. That's expertise, and we want it to be as efficient a place as possible. And so from a business perspective, he said, well, this is no different than a holding company to support these great missions, and so that's what was created. So my job is to oversee all of it, but really to be as productive as possible for the art, to bring resources to the art. So it's an interesting perspective. So as we said, we have become, in those 50 years, one of the 4 largest performing arts centers in America, which is incredible. We're the only one with a museum attached to it. We serve, depending on what shows we have on, over 1 million people, 1.5 million people most of the time, and including several 100,000 children through our arts programs. And we are by far the largest arts education entity in Georgia. So financially, I'm sorry, the former banker in me always defaults to say, what is this financial picture? But we are now over $90 million in annual budgets combined. We employ almost 500 people. This is the scary part of my job. We have over 1 million square feet of space. I'm looking at all of you who manage lots of space, a lot of investment required, and it's beautiful space. And it is art in itself. Over $650 million in assets, which is pretty remarkable, and that's also, book basis. So the paintings are probably worth more than that, would be my guess. And we're blessed to have almost a $400 million endowment. So that's a financial snapshot that usually surprises people. People have no idea how big we are, and I'll talk about how we fund it. So let's talk about the mission. You saw the video. You all who are residents of the state, or really of the Southeast, should be extremely proud of the international prominence we have that's been created. The Alliance Theater particularly, we're one of the few regional Tony winners. They're really known for distinction in new works. Susan Booth, who we're so fortunate to have as the artistic director, came from Chicago 11 years ago and has created a couple things. One, a whole stream of work around new works. And this year at the Hertz Stage, which is the smaller black box theater at the Alliance, we're celebrating 10 years of new playwrights competition. What's going to be interesting to show you is that a few of those playwrights, and we're going to celebrate the best of the group over the past 10 years this upcoming season, Several of them have gone on to become extremely successful playwrights, and so it's worked. So we have that reputation, and it's led to people who are probably very well known to you who want to do new works on the Alliance stage. So for example, Barry Manilow has written a new musical, and he's chosen the Alliance Theater to open that in September. So you better get your tickets now, because I think it's going to be a big hit. Same with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, which is a much older institution. 1945 was when we started with the Atlanta Youth Orchestra. It's evolved to absolutely a world-class orchestra, one of the top, in terms of just size, top 7, probably considered in top 5 of orchestras in America. Particularly known for new composer work. Robert Spano, who's our director, is also head of the Aspen Music Festival, conducts around the world, incredible. High Museum of Art, which is the original site. Those of you who are natives, I actually met someone who said, I took painting classes in Mrs. High's home. I said, wow. And so the site of the Woodruff Arts Center is actually the site of Mrs. High's home on Peachtree. And we still have, if anyone wants a little private tour sometime, we can arrange it. But it was actually built around part of her home. And there's a closet you can walk in and see the original brick wall and windows of her house. So these are all sort of interesting historical tidbits. But that was 1905 was the beginning of her museum. And so fast forward to fantastic Richard Meyer building built in the mid-'80s on the corner of Peachtree and 16th, and then the expansion by Renzo Piano, which is absolutely one of the most beautiful works of architecture, I think, in America, has been created. And what's interesting about the High, to me particularly, is what the leadership there has done. As a newer American city, we don't have enormous collections that were donated to start museums. I'll just use Chicago as an example. You know, the Palmer family in Chicago bought up a lot of works in Paris at the turn of the century and donated them to the Art Institute. And so they have an enormous collection, I think the largest outside of Paris, of Impressionist art. We don't have that. You know, we're probably 2 or 3 generations later. And so what are the niches we have? We actually have a really fine collection in folk art and some other areas, but what we're really known for is the innovation of being a newer American city and how we connect with colleagues around the world to show their work. So for example, and you should not miss this, I'm just telling you, I just opened The Girl with the Pearl Earring, which if you haven't seen that painting, I saw it years ago in Holland. It is a luminescent painting. If you Google most famous paintings in the world, that will be in the top 10. And so see it, because it'll never be in America again in our lifetime. And so I asked, well, how did we get that? Because it's in 3 cities. It's in San Francisco, the Frick, and Atlanta. And Michael Shapiro, the fantastic director of the museum, said, I've been chasing that girl for 10 years. And I said, I don't know if I want to know this story, but he said, you know, it's in the Moritz House, this beautiful museum in The Hague in Holland, and it's about relationships. You know, he knew the director, he knew the previous director, and every time he'd go to Europe, he would stop in and talk about Atlanta and why you want to be here. Unfortunately, the timing was right, and they were doing a renovation, so they decided to let that painting and then several others we have in the exhibition come. Well, those things don't just happen. You have and he had a reputation because he's the guy that got the Louvre to loan their work over 3 years and leave France. They've never done that before. So that's the kind of innovation that we're really focused on, and you should be proud of. And Young Audiences, which is solely devoted to using art to help children and actually all ages learn in schools, where we work with 100,000 plus children in schools, and then all the divisions have major education efforts. We have over 40 people just devoted to education, and we can talk a lot about that. What's interesting and also challenging, every business has its challenges. This is a business like anything else. We just happen to be a nonprofit, and our value is not reflected in earned income. For those of you who work with nonprofits, you'll know that if you earn at least half of your budget, that's really pretty good. I don't know what universities are, but we don't have tuition. We would love that, so maybe you can help me figure out that model. But about 90 to $100 million budget. We earn about half of it: ticket sales, membership income. Thank goodness, we have an endowment, which was basically raised money in the past and surpluses, which funds about 13% of our budget. And then every year we have to raise over a third of our operating expenses. So last year we raised over $35 million with philanthropic gifts. We get less than 1% of our budget from public funding. I'm not happy about that, but that's about making the case. But I don't know, is that a surprise to you all? Because when I shared that internally, actually, people who have their head down doing the job really don't see the whole picture of what that takes. And it was stunning to me that we have people who raise $30 to $35 million a year. And I want to thank you all, because I know actually a lot of donors in this room, and thank you for your support, either you or through your companies, because it is essential. Chart on the right is just where it comes from, and it's really by size. The symphony is the largest. The WAC is the Woodruff Arts Center. That's that shared services model, where essentially what we do is pay for all the stuff, IT, HR, facilities, so that the divisions just get to focus on the art. And that's a great model. So why is it important from a business perspective to fund arts and culture, but also to have it at all? I'm sure you all have as many great answers as I do around it, but there is an extremely strong correlation between education outcomes, economic vitality, school reputations, results, and quite frankly, the appeal of a city for people to live. I serve on, like many of you, a lot of civic organizations. I'm on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, the Midtown Alliance, the ACVB, as I should be. And what's really interesting is this confluence of people's concern and focus around the creative industries, around talent acquisition, keeping all of you wanting to live in Atlanta or live in Georgia or live in the Southeast, and have your children want to come here and have jobs for them. Well, it is, as we all know, a global economy, and it's a competition for talent. And so what are the drivers that make people want to be here? Because if you're talented, you have choice. And technology allows you to live in a lot of different places. So what's interesting, and yesterday, Randy and I actually were in a meeting that we hosted with a lot of those groups and people from basically assets that I would think of as like the Arts Center or the Botanical Garden, the History Center, sports, and institutions, groups who are trying to promote ourselves. And the Chamber of Commerce just finished a strategic plan update. They do it, I think, every 5 years. And there are four major goals, and they are grow and recruit companies, drive higher ed and business collaboration, real focus on internships. 3, advance our quality of life. And 4, tell Atlanta's story. So the latter two are extremely important to understand how important this business is, the arts and culture industry, to all of us. This is a study Georgia State did. This is about Georgia. It's not just about the Woodruff Arts Center, but just to describe the economic impact. This is, those of you financial types, it was very conservatively constructed. I mean, I was impressed by it. 380 arts and culture institutions in the state of Georgia. Over 16 million attend. 725 million in revenues. That's just their operating revenue. We paid as an industry $19 million in sales tax. We're one of a few states in the country that actually charges sales tax and have to give it back to the state. Big economic impact, over nearly 400 million. I'm sad to say, it depends on your perspective, of course, that we were 49th in per capita public funding for the arts in 2011, and now we've achieved 50th. So now, I can see all sides of that argument, but I think it's too bad, because investment in the arts is a great multiplier, and so that's one of the reasons I'm talking to you all, to make sure you understand that. Back to Midtown, we're an economic driver. What's fascinating, when the Woodruff Arts Center was built, which is the original building here, it truly was a memorial arts building. Recall that terrible tragedy that formed that launched really the Woodruff is called the Memorial Arts Building in their name. You see the beautiful Rodin statue on Peachtree, facing Peachtree on our lawn. It was actually a gift from France in honor of the people who died, and beautiful fountain around it with all of their names on the fountain, so it's worth it. So for those of you who are from Atlanta, what was Midtown like in the 1960s? Hippies, yeah. I think, Philip, you told me you had hair then, so, right? You said that, I didn't, he said. But it was sort of a sketchy, fun place to be for some folks, but not the economic engine it is today. And truly, and this discussion was had at the time of when they decided where to put the Memorial Arts Building, it was an economic impact concept of where to put it and to drive Midtown. This is Colony Square, was built right after the Woodruff Arts Center, and you can see what's happened since, and now you see it. And so it is, it's beautiful. So really matters what we do in these assets that are created. Now, some of my real estate colleagues have said, well, that's fun. You finish this chart in 2001, but it would show a little dip in some of those years the next decade. But the point of this is the economic impact of just building the Woodruff Arts Center and Midtown and all that, launching that initiative was over $2 billion of impact, and that's irrefutable. So this is the girl. You got to see her in person, though. Don't miss it. Then this is just what we happen to have on at the high, and the collection is great, so don't miss that. But just wanted to make sure and highlight that to you. Interesting, the season for the Alliance starts in September. The Symphony, which is a very interesting business model, our goal there is to be preeminent live music. And so we own, I don't know if you saw that, or noticed that, but we own the Verizon Amphitheater. We built that, and the whole concept there was to have venues where we could play, the orchestra plays, but also other artists. And so that goes on all summer. The city owns Chastain Park, and we are one of the 2 partners that program Chastain. So we're in 3 different venues. We'd love to perform more in the park. We did back in Piedmont Park this year. Did a free concert that had to be ticketed, and it actually sold out in like 20 minutes. So the demand is there. It's just having to pay for all this is the challenge. But we consider it a privilege to be who we are in the Woodruff Arts Center, and frankly are trying to do so much to help further the story around what we are to the Chamber of Skulls, which is we have great assets in Atlanta, in Georgia. We just need to tell our story better. So I would ask you to engage in that. I'm going to stop and take some questions. I would love any questions and suggestions to tell our story better. So thank you for having me. Thank you.
Remind you all, if you have a question, to wait till you have the mic, because there's a webcast involved here.
Hey, John.
Hey, Virginia. So $19 million is pumped in from sales tax money to the state, and we're 50th in the
per
country.
capita. Mm-hmm.
So the story's not getting out. We don't get respect. I mean, what is it about the Woodruff Arts and the arts in Georgia?
Arts in general. Yeah. Well, it would be just a personal opinion. I think we're having this discussion yesterday is why don't people understand better the impact of what we do? It's probably a vestige of our industry because we don't really act like an industry. We don't have lobbyists. We don't have really formal associations where we know each other than artistically. So, and I'll give Joe Bankoff, my predecessor, great credit for this. And he and I worked on this for 10 years to have. I mean, I became a registered lobbyist, unpaid, to basically get to know political leadership so they understand our story. I never blame the customer. It's not their fault they don't know about us. It's our fault, and it requires communication and investment. That's what I think. And I think we haven't made a great connection with the impact in schools. Personally, all those hands that were raised of the impact it had on your life to be in performing arts. And maybe you didn't go the professional path, But to me, it's just like sports. You know it's good for you. You know it's a good thing to have children involved in sports and public speaking and acting and music. And I tell my colleagues in the orchestra that I was absolutely the world's most mediocre third grade violinist, without question. I mean, I really couldn't tell if it was sharp or flat. It was terrible, and I was a much better kickball player. But I know I learned to read music, and I certainly appreciated what discipline it takes to learn to play an instrument. So those are all good life skills. So, any other questions? Good
Yeah.
morning.
Good morning. I'm sure it's just a function of my age, but it seems like the gulf between the classical arts and the popular arts is greater than ever before, where young people think of performance as something that's 2 minutes and a half on YouTube, rather than the length of a symphony or a play. What are you doing to reach a sustainable younger audience without really giving in on the mission of the greater arts?
That is a great question. You know, it's a constant challenge. It's probably a challenge in a lot of businesses. You know, we are a live, place-based art form in a digital world. You know, that's the challenge. It's also a tremendous opportunity. I mean, you have to look at it that way, that people are creating their own art every day, you know, and distributing it globally. Now, are they the professional arts or no? So I think we just have to recognize it. And so, excuse me, and I'll give, really it's my colleagues who are very creatively working on this. It's as simple as with the orchestra, which is probably the most traditional art form. We have 88 positions. If you want to play Mozart, you have to have that many players, right? So we don't always play Mozart. We write a lot of new works, but they have changed. They're trying something on our goal at the Woodruff Arts Center is beautiful space, right? We should have something going on there all the time. So we now have Friday night concerts that last for an hour. They just started this. You know, we have apparently 80,000 people who are in walking distance during the day of our campus. That's a rare opportunity. And so they just launched the first one. It was really successful. And so said, come over, have a cocktail, don't get in your car, you know, wait, miss traffic. So everyone was there for, you know, it was from 5 to 6:30. Concert was at 6:30 to 7:30. Stay and have dinner or go to a play or go home after that. And it was very, very popular. So that, I think you'll see a lot more of that. I think you'll see more use of technology within programs. The High Museum, and of course it lends itself to some art forms better than others, but they created an app they call Art Clicks, where you can take a picture of a photograph, take a picture of a painting on our wall at the High and download the app, which is free, and it will give you all the history. So it's a private tour, and more importantly, it's a blog site and all this, so you can make comments as you're walking and talking. So a lot of stuff like that, but it's a huge challenge to do that. And I think the schools having art in schools is really important. A lot of the money we raise goes to improve access. You know, trying to get people on campus, because once they're there, it's a lifelong experience usually. Any other questions?
Good morning. As a former teacher, we partnered with your arts partners and had them in our school, and I was just wondering how many schools you reach out to and how many students you're able to impact.
Well, thank you for being a teacher. Are you a former teacher? Is that what you said? Well, I'm sorry about that, but you know, we were in. Let me see if I can get the facts right. Last year. We were in 104 counties in the state of Georgia. I can't ever remember how many we have, but it's second to Texas in terms of numbers of counties. Over 300,000 students. Vast majority of those were in the classroom, and that's and the concentrations are really Metro Atlanta. And what's interesting, this is really important to me personally and to my colleagues, but Our biggest challenge is consistency of leadership. You know, we get very ingrained with a school or a teacher or a classroom, and we really want to help those children keep learning. And we have very formal programs around learning through the arts, and then things change. You know, a teacher leaves or a superintendent leaves, and so it feels more episodic than we want it to be. You know, you really want some consistency with that, and so it's a big focus of ours. I'd love your advice on how to do that. I'm sensitive to your time. We have time for one more, Harriet.
Thank you.
Good morning, Harriet.
Thank you so much for a most interesting talk.
Thank you.
You're a single 501c3.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that must produce some constraints on the various divisions. I wondered if you could address that.
Oh gosh, that's a fun part of my day. You know, what requires, and it's matrix management. So you all are in corporate America. It's no different than my life as a banker. You know, you had retail banking, we had corporate banking, but we're all owned by one shareholder group. Here, we're all part of one legal entity, so one entity's actions have an impact on the other, positive or negative. And so what it takes is tremendous communication and transparency around how we're trying to work together to bring more resources to them. And so it takes a lot of communication. Frankly, the governance is better than it's actually not that challenging, and it's probably dependent upon the leadership of the divisions. They have a lot of mutual respect, one for their art form and also just as people. If that's not the case, it's probably more challenging. But it's from my job is to make sure they know what they know the priorities of each of the areas and how we can work together. And so that's really what I spend all my time on, frankly, at the end of the day, to help support them in a better way. And so it's a very interesting job. I can tell you. Thank you so much for having me and for doing what you do for our community every day, especially you, Chuck. Thank you. Real pleasure. Thank you.
Turn myself back on there. Virginia, thank you for a fascinating presentation. And, you know, I think the thing we all have to keep in mind is and Virginia's reinforced it this morning, is the importance of the Woodruff Arts Center to Atlanta and the surrounding area and to the state. 104 is, I think, about 2/3 of the counties.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Feels like all of them.
In the state,
but-
so there's a statewide impact, and the arts are important. They're important for our soul, but as Virginia's explained, they're also important for us as an economy, if you want to look at it in those terms. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
And we'd like to present you, this is better than a
Beautiful
coffee
art.
cup. A little,
Thank
some
you.
art. This was created by Laura Eby.
Beautiful.
And we'd like to give you
Thank
that
you very
as a
much.
token of our thanks for
Thank you very
being
much.
here at Terry Third Thursday.
Thank you. Thank you for a great
Virginia.
school. Thank you all.